Okay, tonight is the 30th of July, and this is the 14th night we're talking on the Dīgha Nikāya Suttas. Now we come to Sutta number 17, Mahasudassana Sutta. This sutta is about a past life of the Buddha. It's not an important sutta because but it's interesting. There's not so much Dhamma inside. That's why I say it's not so important. Thus have I heard. Once the Lord was staying at Kusinara in the Mala Sal Grove, shortly before his final Nibbana, between the twin sal trees. The Venerable Ananda came to the Lord, saluted him, sat down to one side and said, Lord, may the Blessed Lord not pass away in this miserable little town of wattle and daub, right in the jungle, in the back of beyond. Lord, there are other great cities such as Champa, Rajagaha, Savatthi, Saketa, Kosambi or Varanasi. In those places there are wealthy Khattiyas, Brahmins and householders who are devoted to the Tathagata, and they will provide for the Tathagata's funeral in proper style. And the Buddha said, Ananda, don't call it a miserable little town of wattle and daub, right in the jungle, in the back of beyond. Once upon a time, Ananda, King Mahasudassana was a wheel-turning monarch, a rightful and righteous king, who had conquered the land in 4 directions and ensured the security of his realm. And this king Mahasudassana had this very Kusinara under the name of Kusavati for his capital. And it was 12 yojanas long from east to west and 7 yojanas wide from north to south. Stop here for a moment. So here we hear again what the Buddha said in the previous sutta, where in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. This Kusavati is so long. 12 yojanas means 120 kilometers from east to west, and 7 yojanas means 70 kilometers from north to south. Kusavati was rich, prosperous, and well populated, crowded with people and well stocked with food. Just as the Deva city of Alakamanda is rich, prosperous and well populated, crowded with yakas and well stocked with food. So was the royal city of Kusavati. And the city of Kusavati was never free of 10 sounds by day or night. The sound of elephants, horses, carriages, kettle drums, side drums, lutes, singing, cymbals and gongs, with cries of eat, drink and be merry as 10th. The royal city of Kusavati was surrounded by 7 encircling walls. One was of gold, 1 silver, 1 beryl, 1 crystal, 1 ruby, 1 emerald, and 1 of all sorts of gems. And the gates of Kusavati were of 4 colors, 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 beryl, 1 crystal, and before each gate were set 7 pillars, 3 or 4 times a man's height. 1 was of gold, 1 silver, 1 beryl, 1 crystal, 1 ruby, 1 emerald, and 1 all sorts of gems. Kusavati was surrounded by 7 rows of palm trees of the same materials. The gold trees had gold trunks with silver leaves and fruit. The silver trees had silver trunks with gold leaves and fruit. The beryl trees had beryl trunks with crystal leaves and fruit. The crystal trees had crystal trunks with beryl leaves and fruit. The ruby trees had ruby trunks and emerald leaves and fruit. The emerald trees had emerald trunks and ruby leaves and fruit, while the trees of all sorts of gems were the same as regards trunks, leaves and fruit. The sound of the leaves stirred by the wind was lovely, delightful, sweet and intoxicating, just like that of the 5 kinds of musical instruments played in concert by well-trained and skillful players. And Ananda, those who were libertines and drunkards in Kusavati had their desires assuaged by the sound of the leaves in the wind. King Mahasudassana was endowed with the 7 treasures and the 4 properties. What are the 7? Once on a fast day of the 15th, when the king had washed his head and gone up to the veranda on top of his palace to observe the fast day, the divine wheel treasure appeared to him, 1,000-spoked, complete with fellow, hub and all appurtenances. On seeing it, King Mahasudassana thought, I have heard that when a duly anointed Khattiya king sees such a wheel on the fast day of the 15th, he will become a wheel-turning monarch. May I become such a monarch. Then rising from his seat, covering one shoulder with his robe, the king took a gold vessel in his left hand, sprinkled the wheel with his right hand, and said, "May the noble wheel treasure turn. May the noble wheel treasure conquer." The wheel turned to the east, and King Mahasudassana followed it with his fourfold army. And in whatever country the wheel stopped, the king took up residence with his fourfold army. And those kings who faced him in the eastern region came and said, "Come, your majesty, welcome. We are yours, your majesty, rulers, your majesty." And the king said, "Do not take life. Do not take what is not given. Do not commit sexual misconduct. Do not tell lies. Do not drink strong drink. Be moderate in eating." And those who had faced him in the eastern region became his subjects. And when the wheel had plunged into the eastern sea, it emerged and turned south. And King Mahasudassana followed it with his fourfold army. And those kings became his subjects. Having plunged into the southern sea, it turned west. Having plunged into the western sea, it turned north. And King Mahasudassana followed it with his fourfold army. And those who had faced him in the various regions became his subjects. Then the wheel treasure, having conquered the lands from sea to sea, returned to the royal capital of Kusavati and stopped before the king's palace, where he was trying a case, as if to adorn the royal palace. And this is how the wheel treasure appeared to King Mahasudassana. Then the elephant treasure appeared to King Mahasudassana, pure white, of sevenfold strength, with the wonderful power of travelling through the air, a royal tusker called Uposatha. Seeing him, the king thought, "What a wonderful riding elephant! If only he could be brought under control." And this elephant treasure submitted to control just like a thoroughbred that had been trained for a long time. And once the king, to try him, mounted the elephant treasure at crack of dawn and rode him from sea to sea, returning to Kusavati in time for breakfast. And that is how the elephant treasure appeared to King Mahasudassana. Then the horse treasure appeared to King Mahasudassana, with a crow-shaped head, dark-maned, with the wondrous power of travelling through the air, a royal stallion called Valahaka. And the king thought, "What a wonderful mount! If only he could be brought under control." This horse treasure submitted to control, just like a thoroughbred that had been trained for a long time. And that is how the horse treasure appeared to King Mahasudassana. Then the jewel treasure appeared to King Mahasudassana. It was a beryl, pure, excellent, well cut into 8 facets, clear, bright, unflawed, perfect in every respect. The luster of this jewel treasure radiated for an entire yojana roundabout. That means 10 kilometers. Once the king, to try it, went on night maneuvers on a dark night with his fourfold army, with the jewel treasure fixed on the top of his standard. And all who lived in the villages round about started their daily work, thinking it was daylight. And that is how the jewel treasure appeared to King Mahasudassana. Then the woman treasure appeared to King Mahasudassana, lovely, fair to see, charming, with a lotus-like complexion, not too tall or too short, not too thin or too fat, not too dark or too fair, of more than human, deva-like beauty. And the touch of the skin of the woman treasure was like cotton or silk, and her limbs were cool when it was hot, and warm when it was cold. Her body smelled of sandalwood, and her lips of lotus. This woman treasure rose before the king, and retired later, and was always willing to do his pleasure, and she was pleasant of speech. And this woman treasure was not unfaithful to the king, even in thought, much less in deed. And that is how the woman treasure appeared to King Mahasudassana. Then the householder treasure appeared to King Mahasudassana, with a divine eye which, as a result of karma, he possessed. He saw where treasure, owned and ownerless, was hidden. He came to the king and said, "Have no fear, your majesty. I will look after your wealth properly." And once the king, to try him, went on board a ship and had it taken to the current in the middle of the Ganges. Then he said to the householder treasure, "Householder, I want some gold coin." And the householder treasure said, "Well then, sire, let the ship be brought to one bank." And the king said, "I want the gold coins here." Then the householder touched the water with both hands and drew out a vessel full of gold coins, saying, "Is that enough, sire? Will that do, sire?" And the king said, "That is enough, householder. That will do. You have served me enough." And that is how the householder treasurer appeared to King Mahasudassana. Then the counselor treasurer appeared to King Mahasudassana. He was wise, experienced, clever and competent to advise the king on how to proceed with what should be proceeded with, and to withdraw from what should be withdrawn from, and to overlook what should be overlooked. He came to the king and said, "Have no fear, your majesty, I shall advise you." And that is how the counselor treasurer appeared to King Mahasudassana, and how he was equipped with all the 7 treasures. Again, Ananda, King Mahasudassana was endowed with the 4 properties. What are they? Firstly, the king was handsome, good to look at, pleasing, with a complexion like the finest lotus, surpassing other men. Secondly, he was long-lived, outliving other men. Thirdly, he was free from illness, free from sickness, with a healthy digestion, less subject to cold and heat than that of other men. Fourthly, he was beloved and popular with Brahmins and householders. Just as a father is beloved by his children, so he was with Brahmins and householders. And they were beloved by the king as children are beloved by their father. Once the king set out for the pleasure park with his 4-fold army, and the Brahmins and householders came to him and said, "Pass slowly by, sire, that we may see you as long as possible." And the king said to the charioteer, "Drive the chariot slowly so that I can see these Brahmins and householders as long as possible." Thus King Mahasudassana was endowed with these 4 properties. This reminds me a bit of the king of Thailand. He is much loved by his people. When he comes out, they all love to see him and pay respect. And he loves to see his people. Then King Mahasudassana thought, "Suppose I were to construct lotus ponds between the palm trees, 100 bow lengths apart." And he did so. The lotus ponds were lined with 4 colored tiles, gold, silver, beryl, and crystal, each pond being approached by 4 staircases, 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 beryl, and 1 crystal. And the gold staircase had gold posts with silver railings and banisters. The silver had silver posts with gold railings and banisters, and so on. And the lotus ponds were provided with 2 kinds of parapet, gold and silver. The gold parapets having gold posts, silver railings and banisters, and the silver parapets having silver posts, gold railings and banisters. Then the king thought, "Suppose I were to provide each pond with suitable flowers for garlands, blue, yellow, red and white lotuses, which will last through all seasons without fading." And he did so. Then he thought, "Suppose I were to place bathmen on the banks of these ponds to bathe those who come there." And he did so. Then he thought, "Suppose I were to establish charitable posts on the banks of these ponds, so that those who want food can get it, those who want drink can get it, those who want clothes can get it, those who want transport can get it, those who want a sleeping place can get it, those who want a wife can get one, and those who want gold coin can get it." And he did so. Then the Brahmins and householders took great wealth and went to the king, saying, "Sire, here is wealth that we have gathered together, especially for your majesty. Please accept it." And the king said, "Thank you, friends, but I have enough wealth from legitimate revenues. Let this be yours, and take away more besides." Being thus refused by the king, they withdrew to one side and considered, "It would not be right for us to take this wealth back home again. Suppose we were to build a dwelling for King Mahasudassana." So they went to the king and said, "Sire, we would build you a dwelling." And the king accepted by silence. And Sakha Devaraja, knowing in his mind King Mahasudassana's thought, said to the attendant Deva, Visakama, "Come, friend Visakama, and build a dwelling for King Mahasudassana, a palace called Dhamma." "Very good, Lord," Visakama replied. And as swiftly as a strong man might stretch his flexed arm or flex it again, he at once vanished from the heaven of the 30 tree and appeared before King Mahasudassana and said to him, "Sire, I shall build you a dwelling, a palace called Dhamma." The king assented by silence, and Visakhama built him the palace of Dhamma. The palace of Dhamma, Ananda, was a yojana in length from east to west and half a yojana wide from north to south. That means 10 kilometers in length and 5 kilometers wide. The whole palace was faced up to 3 times a man's height with tiles of 4 colors, gold, silver, beryl and crystal, and it contained 84,000 columns of the same 4 colors. It had 24 staircases of the same 4 colors, and the gold staircases had gold posts with silver railings and banisters, etc. It also had 84,000 chambers of the same colors. In the gold chamber was a silver couch. In the silver chamber a gold couch. In the beryl chamber an ivory couch. And in the crystal chamber a sandalwood couch. On the door of the gold chamber a silver palm tree was figured with silver stem, gold leaves and fruit, etc. On the door of the silver chamber a golden palm tree was figured with golden trunk, leaves and fruit. On the door of the beryl chamber a crystal palm tree was figured with crystal trunk and beryl leaves and fruit. On the door of the crystal chamber a beryl palm tree was figured with crystal leaves and fruit. Then the king thought, suppose I were to make a grove of palm trees all of gold by the door of the great gable chamber where I sit in the daytime. And he did so. Surrounding the Dhamma palace were 2 parapets, one of gold, one of silver. The gold one had gold posts, silver railings and banisters, and the silver one had silver posts, gold railings and banisters. The Dhamma palace was surrounded by 2 nets of tinkling bells. One net was gold with silver bells, the other silver with gold bells. And when these nets of bells were stirred by the wind, their sound was lovely, delightful, sweet and intoxicating, just like that of the 5 kinds of musical instruments, played in concert by well-trained and skillful players. And those who were libertines and drunkards in Kusavati had their desires assuaged by the sound of those nets of bells. And when the Dhamma palace was finished, it was hard to look at, dazzling to the eyes, just as in the last month of the rains in autumn, when there is a clear and cloudless sky. The sun breaking through the mist is hard to look at. So was the Dhamma palace when it was finished. Then the king thought, suppose I were to make a lotus lake called Dhamma in front of the Dhamma palace. So he did so. This lake was a yojana long from east to west and half a yojana wide from north to south, and lined with 4 kinds of tiles, gold, silver, beryl and crystal. There were 24 staircases to it of 4 different kinds, gold, silver, beryl and crystal. The gold staircases had gold posts with silver railings and banisters. The silver had gold railings and banisters, and so on. The Dhamma lake was surrounded by 7 kinds of palm trees. The sound of the leaves stirred by the wind was lovely, delightful, sweet and intoxicating, just like that of the 5 kinds of musical instruments played in concert by well-trained and skillful players. And Ananda, those who were libertines and drunkards in Kusavati had their desires assuaged by the sound of the leaves in the wind. When the Dhamma palace and Dhamma lake were finished, the King Mahasudassana, having satisfied every wish of those who at the time were ascetics or Brahmins or revered as such, ascended into the Dhamma palace. Stop here for a moment. This description of the sounds of the trees and the lakes and all that. I suspect this Mahayana, this Amitabha Sutra, the description of the Pure Land, they took a bit from here, because many of the things in the Amitabha Sutra seems to be similar to what is mentioned here, but this sutta is much earlier, about 500 years earlier. Then King Mahasudassana thought, of what karma is it the fruit, of what karma is it the result, that I am now so mighty and powerful? Then he thought, it is the fruit, the result of 3 kinds of karma, of giving, self-control and abstinence. Let's stop here for a moment. So you see, giving is dana, self-control is like sila, morality, and maybe higher than sila, and similarly with abstinence. So Self-control also has to do with meditation. When we meditate and our mind is strong, we can control ourselves and also abstain from what we should not indulge in, etc. So it's dana, sila and bhavana, the three kinds of karma that gives us great merit. Then the king went to the gable chamber, to the great gable chamber, and standing at the door exclaimed, "May the thought of lust cease, may the thought of ill will cease, may the thought of cruelty cease. Thus far and no further the thought of lust, of ill will, of cruelty." These are the three wrong thoughts. Then the king went into the great gable chamber, sat down cross-legged on the golden couch, and detached from all sense desires, detached from unwholesome mental states, entered and remained in the first jhana, which is with thought directed and sustained, born of detachment, filled with delight and joy. And with the subsiding of thought directed and sustained, by gaining inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he entered and remained in the second jhana, which is without thought directed and sustained, born of concentration, filled with delight and joy. And with the fading away of delight, remaining imperturbable, mindful and clearly aware, he experienced in himself that joy of which the noble ones say, "Happy is he who dwells with equanimity and mindfulness." He entered and remained in the third jhana. And having given up pleasure and pain, and with the disappearance of former gladness and sadness, he entered and remained in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain, with utter purity of equanimity and mindfulness. I'll stop here for a moment. So here you see these states of jhana, like the third jhana is mentioned here, mindful and clearly aware. And the fourth jhana, there is utter purity of equanimity and mindfulness. Unlike what some monks say, the monks, they don't understand. They say, what's the use of jhana? When you are in jhana, you have no mindfulness. This just contradicts what the Buddha says. Then the king, emerging from the great gable chamber, went to the golden gable chamber and seated cross-legged on the silver couch, stayed pervading first one quarter, then the second, the third and the fourth quarter, with a mind filled with loving kindness. Thus he stayed, spreading the thought of loving kindness above, below and across, everywhere, always with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, magnified, unbounded, without hatred or ill will. And he did likewise with compassion, joy and equanimity. I'll stop here for a moment. So as I mentioned before, this is the way the Buddha teaches us to practice radiation of loving kindness, to enter the jhana, come out of it, then only with a strong mind to be able to radiate the loving kindness, compassion, joy and equanimity. Of King Mahasudassana's 84,000 cities, his capital, Kusavati, was the chief. Of his 84,000 palaces, Dhamma was the chief. Of his 84,000 gable halls, the great gable chamber was the chief. His 84,000 couches were of gold, silver, ivory, sandalwood, covered with fleece, wool spread with kadali deer hide, with head covers, with red cushions at both ends. Of his 84,000 elephants adorned with gold ornaments, with gold banners and spread with gold nets. Uposatha, the royal tusker, was chief. Of his 84,000 carriages, covered with lion skins, tiger skins, leopard skins, or with orange-colored cloth, adorned with gold ornaments, gold banners and spread with gold nets, the chariot Vejayanta was the chief. Of his 84,000 jewels, the jewel treasure was the chief. Of his 84,000 wives, Queen Subhadra was the chief. Of his 84,000 householders, the householder treasurer was the chief. Of his 84,000 Katyas retainers, the counselor treasurer was the chief. His 84,000 cows had tethers of fine jute and milk pails of silver. His 84,000 bales of clothing were of the finest linen, cotton, silk and wool. His 84,000 rice offerings were there for the taking by those in need, evening and morning. And at that time, King Mahasudassana's 84,000 elephants waited on him evening and morning. And he thought, these 84,000 elephants wait on me evening and morning. How if at the end of each century, 42,000 elephants were to wait on me, turn and turn about. And he gave instructions accordingly to his counselor treasurer, and so it was done. I'll stop here for a moment. So you see this universal monarch, his blessings is so much that he has so much of everything. And Ananda, after many hundred thousand years, Queen Subhadra thought, it is a long time since I saw King Mahasudassana. Suppose I were to go and see him. So she said to her women, come now, wash your heads and put on clean clothes. It is long since we saw King Mahasudassana. We shall go to see him. Yes, Your Majesty, they said, and prepared themselves as ordered. Then returned to the queen. And Queen Subhadra said to the counselor treasurer, friend counselor, draw up the fourfold army. It is long since we saw King Mahasudassana. We shall go and see him. Very good, Your Majesty, said the counselor treasurer. And having drawn up the fourfold army, he reported to the queen, now is the time to do as Your Majesty wishes. That Queen Subhadra went with the fourfold army and her women folk to the Dhamma palace, and entering, went to the great gable chamber and stood leaning against the doorpost. And King Mahasudassana, thinking, what is this great noise as of a crowd of people, came out of the door and saw Queen Subhadra leaning against the doorpost. And he said, stay there, Queen, do not enter. Then King Mahasudassana said to a certain man, here, fellow, go to the great gable chamber, bring the gold couch out and lay it down among the gold palm trees. Very good, sire, said the man, and did so. Then King Mahasudassana adopted the lion posture on his right side, with one foot on the other, mindful and clearly aware. Then King Subhadra thought, King Mahasudassana's faculties are purified. His complexion is clear and bright. Oh, I hope he is not dead. Then she said to him, sire, of your 84,000 cities, Kusavati is the chief. Make a wish, arouse the desire to live there. Similarly, of the other things, his palaces, his halls, etc. At this, King Mahasudassana said to the queen, for a long time, queen, you spoke pleasing, delightful, attractive words to me. But now, at this last time, your words have been unpleasing, undelightful, unattractive to me. And she said, sire, how then am I to speak to you? And he said, this is how you should speak. All things that are pleasing and attractive are liable to change, to vanish, to become otherwise. Do not, sire, die filled with longing. To die filled with longing is painful and blameworthy. Of your 84,000 cities, Kusavati is the chief. Abandon desire, abandon the longing to live with them. Of your 84 palaces, Dhamma is the chief. Abandon desire, abandon the longing to live there, etc. So she said to tell him to abandon desire for all these things. At this, Queen Subhadra cried out and burst into tears. Then wiping away her tears, she said, sire, all things that are pleasing and attractive are liable to change. Do not, sire, die filled with longing. To die filled with longing is painful and blameworthy. Of your 84,000 cities, Kusavati is the chief. Abandon desire, abandon the longing to live with them. Of your 84,000 palaces, Dhamma is the chief. Abandon desire, abandon the longing to live there, etc. Soon after this, King Mahasudassana died. And just as a householder or his son might feel drowsy after a good meal, so he felt the sensation of passing away, and he had a favorable rebirth in the Brahma world. King Mahasudassana indulged in boyish sports for 84,000 years. For 84,000 years he exercised the viceroyalty. For 84,000 years he ruled as king. And for 84,000 years as a layman, he lived the holy life in the Dhamma palace. And having practiced the 4 divine abidings, at the breaking up of the body, he was reborn in the Brahma world. Now Ananda, you might think that King Mahasudassana at that time was somebody else, but you should not regard it so. For I was King Mahasudassana then. Those 84,000 cities of which Kusavati was the chief were mine. Of the 84,000 palaces,
all were mine, etc. And of those 84,000 cities, I dwelt in just one, Kusavati. Of the 84,000 wives I had, just one looked after me, and she was called Katiyani or Velami Kani. Of the 84,000 bales of cloth, I had just one. The 84,000 rice offerings, there was just one measure of choice curry that I ate. See, Ananda, how all those conditioned states of the past have vanished and changed. Thus, Ananda, conditioned states are impermanent. They are unstable. They can bring us no comfort. And such being the case, Ananda, we should not rejoice in conditioned states. We should cease to take an interest in them and be liberated from them. 6 times, Ananda, I recall discarding the body in this place. And at the 7th time, I discarded it as a wheel-turning monarch, a righteous king who had conquered the 4 quarters and established a firm rule, and who possessed the 7 treasures. But, Ananda, I do not see any place in this world with its devas and maras and brahmas, or in this generation with its ascetics and brahmins, princes and people, where the Tathagata will for an 8th time discard the body. So the Lord spoke. The wayfarer having said this, the teacher said, impermanent are all compounded things, prone to rise and fall. Having risen, they are destroyed. They are passing towards bliss. That's the end of the sutta. So you see, it's quite moving. There are some other suttas where, not sutta, maybe stories like Jataka stories, where the Buddha said in his past life when he was, he told his barber, every time the barber cuts his hair, said if you see one white hair, you must tell me. Then one day, after a long time, the barber saw one white hair. Then he told the barber to pluck it out carefully and put it in my hand. So the barber did that, and he had a look, actually white hair. Then he told the barber, from this day onwards, he's going to renounce his kingship. Then he handed over the kingdom to his son. Then he locked himself in the palace and meditated until he attained the jhanas, just like here. He's reborn in heaven. So it's a good advice for us when we see white hair on our head. We must prepare to take the long journey already. I must tell your wife like here, like the King Mahasudassana. For a long time your words have been pleasing to me, but now you must speak to me like this. Let's try to finish another sutta, not too long. Janavasabha Sutta. This Janavasabha must be one of the Buddha's disciples who died and was reborn as a deva. I think this is King Bimbisara of Magadha, I think. Okay. Thus have I heard. Once the Lord was staying at Nadika at the brick house, and at that time the Lord was explaining the rebirths of various devotees up and down the country who had died and passed away. Kasis and Kosalans, Vajyans and Malas, Chetis and Vangsas, Kurus and Panchalas, Machas and Surasenas, saying, this one was reborn there, and that one there. More than 50 Nadikan devotees, having abandoned the 5 lower fetters, were reborn spontaneously and would attain Nibbana without returning to this world. Over 90 of them, having abandoned 3 fetters and weakened greed, hatred and delusion, were once returners, who would return to this world once more and then make an end of suffering. And more than 500, having abandoned 3 fetters, were stream winners, incapable of falling into states of woe, certain of Nibbana. This news reached the ears of the devotees in Nadika, and they were pleased, delighted, and filled with joy to hear the Lord's replies. And the Venerable Ananda heard of the Lord's report and the Nadikans' delight. And he thought, there were also Magadhan disciples of long standing who have died and passed away. One would think Anga and Magadha contained no Magadhan disciples who had died. Yet they too were devoted to the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, and they observed the discipline perfectly. The Lord has not stated their destiny. It would be good to have a declaration about this. It would make the multitude have faith and so attain a good rebirth. So the Venerable Ananda continued thinking. Now King Sinya Bimbisara of Magadha was a righteous and lawful king. a friend of Brahmins, householders, town and country dwellers, so that his fame is spread abroad. That righteous king of ours is dead, who gave us so much happiness. Life was easy for us who dwelt under his righteous rule. And he was devoted to the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, and observed the discipline perfectly, or Sila. Thus people say, King Bimbisara, who praised the Lord to his dying day, is dead. The Lord has not declared his destiny, and it would be good to have a declaration. Besides, it was in Magadha that the Lord gained his enlightenment. Since the Lord gained his enlightenment in Magadha, why does he not declare the destinies of those who have died there? For the Lord not to make such a declaration would cause unhappiness to the Magadhans. Such being the case, why does not the Lord make such a declaration? And after thus reflecting in solitude on behalf of the Magadhan devotees, the Venerable Ananda rose at the crack of dawn, went to the Lord and saluted him. Then sitting down to one side, he said, Lord, I have heard what has been declared concerning the inhabitants of Nadika, etc. They were all devoted to the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha, and they observed the Sila, or discipline, perfectly. The Lord has not stated their destiny. Why does not the Lord make such a declaration? Then having thus spoken to the Lord on behalf of the Magadhan devotees, he rose from his seat, saluted the Lord, passed him by to the right and departed. As soon as Ananda had gone, the Lord took his robe and bowl and went into Nadika for alms. Later, on his return, after his meal, he went to the brick house, and having washed his feet, he went in, and having thought over, considered and given his whole mind to the question of the Magadhan devotees, he sat down on the prepared seat, saying, I shall know their destiny and future lot, whatever it is. And then he perceived the destiny and fate of each one of them. And in the evening, emerging from meditative seclusion, the Lord came out of the brick house and sat down on the prepared seat in the shade of his lodging. Stop here for a moment. So here, Venerable Ananda is asking the Buddha to talk about the Magadhan devotees who have passed away, where they are reborn. So you see here the Buddha, to consider this, he sat down in meditation, then he considered, then only he knew. The Buddha says in the suttas that he does not know everything automatically. What he wants to know, he has to contemplate. And sometimes he must contemplate for many hours. Then only he gets to know what he wants to know. Like for dependent origination, the Buddha mentioned to understand dependent origination, he spent 12 hours from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. The whole night he was sitting in meditation and contemplating and using his psychic eye also to see and understand dependent origination. So the Buddha does not know everything automatically. He has to contemplate to know. Then the Venerable Ananda came to the Lord, saluted him, sat down to one side and said, Lord, the Lord's countenance looks bright and shining, showing that the Lord's mind is at ease. Has the Lord been satisfied with today's lodging? Ananda, after you spoke to me about the devotees of Magadha, I took my robe and bowl and went into Nadika for alms. Later on, I went to the brick house and considered the question of the Magadhan devotees, and I perceived the destiny and fate of each one of them. Then the voice of a yakka who had passed over cried out, I am Janavasabha, Lord, I am Janavasabha, wayfarer. Well, Ananda, do you know anyone who formerly bore the name of Janavasabha? And Venerable Ananda said, I must admit, Lord, that I have never heard such a name. And yet on hearing the name Janavasabha, my hair stood on end, and I thought, he whose name is Janavasabha will not be such a low-ranking yakka. Ananda, immediately after I heard this voice, the yakka appeared to me as a noble vision and uttered a second cry, I am Bimbisara, Lord, I am Bimbisara, wayfarer. I have now for the 7th time been reborn into the entourage of the Lord Vesavana. Thus having passed away as a king of humans, I have now become among the devas, a king of non-human beings. 7 states here and 7 there, 14 births. That's the tally of lives I can recall. Stop here for a moment. So this King Bimbisara is the king who was killed by his son. The son, Ajatasattu, wanted to become king. As we heard in the second Dīgha Nikāya Sutta, Samanya Pala Sutta, this King Ajatasattu to become king. He killed his father. This is the father, King Bimbisara. Now he's reborn as a Yaka. And in the Deva world, there are many Deva Rajas. Many Deva Rajas. Just like we have many Sultans. So he was reborn as one of the Deva Rajas. But under the Yaka king called Vesavana. The name of Vesavana. That's another name. Forgot. For a long time, Lord, I have known myself to be exempt from states of woe, and now the desire arises in me to become a once returner. What he means here is that he has been Sotapanna. Now he wants to become a Sakadagamin. I said, it is amazing, it is astonishing that the Reverend Yaka Janavasabha should say this. On what grounds can he know of such an august specific attainment? And this Yaka said, not otherwise, Lord, not otherwise welfarer than through your teaching. From the time when I became fully committed and gained complete faith, then from then on, Lord, for a long time I have known myself to be exempt from states of woe, and the desire has arisen in me to become a once returner. And here, Lord, having been sent by King Vesavana on some business to King Virulhaka, I saw the Lord entering the brick house and sitting down and considering the question of the Magadhan devotees. And since I had only just heard King Vesavana announce to his assembly what those folks' fates were, it is no wonder that I thought, I will go and see the Lord and report this to him. And these, Lord, are the two reasons why I came to see the Lord. So here he says he was sent by this king of the Yakas, King Vesavana, to pass a message to King Virulhaka. Is another one of the four great heavenly kings. He's the Lord of what? The Gandhabas? I quite forgot. And Janavasabha continued. Lord, in earlier days, long ago, on the fast day of the 15th, at the beginning of the rains, in the full moon night, all the 33 gods were seated in the Sudhamma hall, a great congregation of divine beings or heavenly beings. And the four great kings from the four quarters were there. There was King Datarata, he is the king of the Gandhabas, from the east, at the head of followers facing east. The great king Virulhaka from the south, he is the king of the Kumbhandas, facing north. And the great king Virupaka from the west is the king of the Nagas, facing east. And the great king Vesavana is the king of the Yakas, from the north facing south. These are the four great kings. King Datarata is the king of the Gandhabas. Virulhaka Devaraja is in charge of the Kumbhandas. Virupaka Devaraja is in charge of the Nagas, the snake spirits. And Vesavana Devaraja is in charge of the Yakas. On such occasions, that is the order in which they are seated. And after that came our seats. And those Devas who having lived the holy life under the Lord, had recently appeared in the heaven of the 33, outshone the other Devas in brightness and glory. And for that reason, the 33 gods were pleased, happy, filled with delight and joy, saying, the Devas' hosts are growing, the Asuras' hosts are declining. Then Lord Sakha, ruler of the gods, seeing the satisfaction of the 33, uttered these verses of rejoicing. The gods of 33 rejoice, the leader too, praising the Tathagata and Dhamma's truth, seeing new come Devas, fair and glorious, who have lived the holy life, now well reborn, outshining all the rest in fame and splendor. The mighty sages' pupils singled out. Seeing this, the 33 rejoice, the leader too, praising the Tathagata and the Dhamma's truth. Stop here for a moment. These 33 gods in the heaven of the 33, Tavatimsa heaven, they are always at war with the Asuras. The Asuras are another type of heavenly beings in the heaven of the 33. But they are very undisciplined. these asuras, they like to drink liquor and get drunk and fight, and they have a very bad temper. So we consider for a moment, how come these asuras, they are of such character and reborn in heaven? Probably like now, among human beings, we have two categories of people doing good. One is those who practice the Dhamma, understand the Dhamma, and become Sotapanna and all that. And another category is worldly people, people in the business line and who have a desire to create blessings for themselves. So they do philanthropy, they are charitable, but they have a lot of faults. Because they don't understand the Dhamma, they don't know how to get rid of their faults. So these people, worldly people, probably with blessings, they are reborn as these asuras in the 33 heaven. Whereas people who practice the Dhamma as well as do good, they are reborn as the Sakadeva Raja's following. So Sakadeva Raja, he saw that the Buddha's disciples are reborn in the heaven with him. He was very happy. And he noticed that these who were followers of the Buddha, they outshone the other devas. Their blessings are more. Maybe because of their meditation, because of their virtue. So they have more blessings. The light, these devas, they judge each other by the light. The more light they emit, the more powerful and more great their psychic power and all that. At this, the 33 gods rejoice still more, saying, the devas' hosts are growing, the asuras' hosts are declining. And then they consulted and deliberated together about the matter concerning which they had assembled in the Sudhamma hall. And the four great kings were advised and admonished on this matter as they stood by their seats unmoving. The kings, instructed, marked the words they spoke, standing calm, serene, beside their seats. Stop here for a moment. So you see here, when the 33 gods meet in the Sudhamma hall, and the four great kings of a lower rank, they have to be there. And when the 33 gods, they sit discussing, the four great kings have to stand in attention out of respect. They don't have the enough blessings to sit on the same level with the 33 gods. They must stand in attention, even though in their own realm they are very mighty and powerful. And then Lord, a glorious radiance shone forth from the north, and a splendor was seen greater than the sheen of the devas. And Sakka said to the 33 gods, Gentlemen, when such signs are seen, such light is seen, and such radiance shines forth, Brahma will appear. The appearance of such radiance is the first sign of Brahma's approaching manifestation. When they see these signs, Brahma will soon appear. This is Brahma's signs, radiance, vast and great. Then the 33 gods sat down, each in his proper place, saying, Let us find out what comes of this radiance. And having found the truth of it, we will go towards it. The four great kings, sitting down in their places, said the same. Thus they were all agreed. Lord, whenever Brahma Sanan Kumara appears to the 33 gods, he appears having assumed a grosser form, because his natural appearance is not such as to be perceptible to their eyes. Stop here for a moment. So, when Brahma comes to visit the 33 gods, if he assumes his normal form, they can't see him because he's a higher deva. His body is more fine than theirs. Just like we cannot see the devas of the four great kings. The devas of the four great kings and the 33 gods cannot see Brahma because he is a higher level. So when Brahma comes to them, he has to make his body a gross body. Then only they can see him. When he appears to the 33 gods, he outshines other devas in radiance and glory, just as a figure made of gold outshines the human figure. And Lord, when Brahma, Sanan Kumara, appears to the 33 gods, not one of them salutes him or rises or offers him a seat. They all sit silently with palms together, cross-legged, thinking he will sit down on the couch of that God from whom he wants something. And the one on whose couch he sits down is as thrilled and delighted as a duly anointed Khattiya king on assuming his royal office. Then Lord Brahma, Sanat Kumara, having assumed a grosser form, appeared to the 33 gods in the shape of the youth Panchasika. Rising up in the air, he appeared floating cross-legged, just as a strong man might sit down on a properly spread couch or on the ground. And seeing the delight of the 33 gods, he uttered these verses of rejoicing. The gods of 33 rejoice, the leader too, praising the Tathagata and the Dhamma's truth. Seeing new-come devas, fair and glorious, who have lived a holy life, now well reborn, outshining all the rest in fame and splendor, the mighty sage's pupils singled out. Seeing this, the 33 rejoice, the leader too, praising the Tathagata and the Dhamma's truth. So here he's saying that those who were reborn as powerful devas, they have lived the holy life under the Buddha. So they are the monks and nuns under the Buddha. They are reborn and outshine the 33 gods. Now, to the matter of Brahma Sanat Kumara's speech, and as for the manner of his speech, his voice had 8 qualities. It was distinct, intelligible, pleasant, attractive, compact, concise, deep and resonant. And when he spoke in that voice to the assembly, its sound did not carry outside. Whoever has such a voice as that is said to have the voice of Brahma. So his voice has these 8 qualities. And Brahma, Sanat Kumara, multiplying his shape by 33, sat down cross-legged on each individual couch of the 33 and said, "What do my lords, the 33, think? Since the Lord, out of compassion for the world and for the benefit and happiness of the many, has acted to the advantage of devas and mankind, those, whoever they may be, who have taken refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha, and have observed the moral precepts, have at death and the breaking up of the body arisen in the company of the Parinimita Vasavati Devas, or the Nimanarati Devas, or the Tusita Devas, or the Yama Devas, or in the retinue of the 33 gods, or of the 4 great kings, or at the very least in the company of the Gandhabas." Stop here for a moment. So these are the 6 heavens in the sensual desire realm. The highest is the Parinimita Vasavati, and then after that Nimanarati. These 2, their blessings are so great. When they think of anything they want, it just appears automatically. Then after that is Tusita, and then Yama, and then Tavatimsa, and then Chatumaharajika. And then the Gandhabas are like servants. They serve the 4 great kings and the 33 gods. That's why at the very least the company of the Gandhabas. This was a burden of Brahma Sanat Kumara's speech, and every one of the gods he spoke to thought, "He is sitting on my couch, he is speaking to me alone." All the forms assume with one voice speak, and having spoken all at once are silent. And so the 33, the leader too, each thinks he speaks to me alone. Then Brahma Sanat Kumara assumed a single form. Then he sat down on the couch of Sakha and said, "What do my lords, the 33, think? This Lord, Arahant, Sammasambuddha, has known and see the 4 bases of psychic power and how to develop, perfect and practice them. But 4, here among develops concentration of intention accompanied by effort of will, concentration of energy, concentration of mind, concentration of investigation accompanied by effort of will. These are the 4 bases of psychic power. And whatever ascetics or Brahmins have in the past realized such powers in different ways, they have all developed and strongly practiced these 4 ways. And the same applies to all who may in the future or who do now realize such powers. Do my lords, the 33, observe such powers in me?" "Yes, Brahma." "Well, I too have developed and strongly practiced these 4 ways." I stop here for a moment. This Brahma Sanat Kumara was also a former monk. In some other sutta, I think in the Samyutta Nikāya, he mentioned this one. This was the burden of Brahma Sanat Kumara's speech. He went on, "What do my lords of the 33 think? There are 3 gateways to the bliss proclaimed by the Lord who knows and sees. What are they? In the first place, someone dwells in association with sense desires, with unwholesome conditions. At some time, he hears the Aryan Dhamma. He pays close attention and practices in conformity with it. By so doing, he comes to live dissociated from such sense desires and unwholesome conditions. As a result of this dissociation, pleasant feeling arises, and what is more, gladness. Just as pleasure might give birth to rejoicing, so from pleasant feeling he experiences gladness. In the second place, there is someone in whom the gross tendencies of body, speech and thought are not allayed. At some time he hears the Aryan Dhamma, and his gross tendencies of body, speech and thought are allayed. As a result of this allaying, pleasant feeling arises, and what is more, gladness arises. In the third place, there is someone who really does not know what is right and what is wrong, what is blameworthy and what is not, what is to be practiced and what is not, what is base and what is noble, what is foul, fair, or mixed in quality. At some time he hears the Aryan Dhamma. He pays close attention and practices in conformity with it. As a result, he comes to know in reality what is right and wrong, what is blameworthy and what is not, what is to be practiced and what is not, what is base and what is noble, what is foul, fair, or mixed in quality. In him who knows and sees thus, ignorance is dispelled, and knowledge arises. With the waning of ignorance and the arising of knowledge, pleasant feeling arises, and what is more, gladness. Just as pleasure might give birth to rejoicing, so from pleasant feeling he experiences gladness. These are the 3 gateways to the bliss proclaimed by the Lord who knows and sees. Stop here for a moment. So here Brahma is saying there are 3 types of people in this world, and after they have listened to the Dhamma, they change their ways. The first one, he gives up these sense pleasures, and he practices the Dhamma, probably means he meditates also. And then the second place, somebody who has gross tendencies, means a gross person, what we say, gu khe ngao ching, gross tendencies of body, speech and mind. But after he hears the Dhamma, then he understands, he pays close attention, and then he practices the Dhamma, then he changes his tendencies, and then he meditates, pleasant feeling arises. And then the third one is an ignorant person. He doesn't know what is right, what is wrong, what is blameworthy, what is not blameworthy. This is like a lot of people in the world. We do a lot of things, we don't realize it is wrong. For example, hunting and fishing and all that. We think we are not harming anybody. These animals were made for us to eat. So it's because of ignorance we do these things. Later when we suffer, and then we are shocked. Some people, when they after they die, they go to hell. They are shocked. They thought they didn't do anything wrong. So only when you hear the Dhamma, then you understand what is right, what is wrong, and all these things. And so you have to listen to the Dhamma. Here it says, we listen to the Dhamma with close attention, and then we understand, then we practice in conformity with it. This was the burden of Brahma, Sanat Kumara's speech. He went on, "What do my lords of the 33 think? How well has the Lord Buddha, who knows and sees, pointed out 4 intense states of mindfulness for the attainment of that which is good. What are they? Here among abides contemplating the body in the body, earnestly, clearly aware, mindful, and having put away all hankering and fretting for the world. As he thus dwells contemplating the body in the body internally, he becomes perfectly concentrated and perfectly serene. Being thus calm and serene, he gains knowledge and vision externally of other bodies. He abides contemplating feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, earnestly, clearly aware, mindful, and having put away all hankering and fretting for the world. As he thus dwells contemplating Dhamma in Dhamma, he becomes perfectly concentrated and perfectly serene. Being thus calm and serene, he gains knowledge and vision of other bodies. of other Dhammas. These are the 4 intense states of mindfulness, well pointed out by the Lord Buddha who knows and sees for the attainment of that which is good. Stop here for a moment. These 4 satipatthana, you practice them skillfully, correctly, according to the satipatthana sangyutta, you must attain jhana, must attain one-pointedness of mind. That's why here it says, he becomes perfectly concentrated and perfectly serene. Perfectly concentrated means attain samma samadhi. Samma samadhi is the 4 jhanas. This was the burden of Brahma, Sanat Kumara's speech. He went on, what do my lords of the 33 think? How well has the Lord who knows and sees pointed out the 7 requisites of concentration for the development of perfect concentration and the perfection of concentration. What are they? They are right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness. That one-pointedness of mind that is produced by these 7 factors is called the Aryan right concentration with its basis and requisites. From right view arises right thought. From right thought arises right speech. From right speech arises right action. From right action arises right livelihood. From right livelihood arises right effort. From right effort arises right mindfulness. From right mindfulness arises right concentration. From right concentration arises right knowledge. From right knowledge arises right liberation. If anyone truthfully declaring, well proclaimed by the Lord is Dhamma, visible here and now, timeless, inviting inspection, leading onward, to be comprehended by the wise, each for himself, were to say, open are the doors of the deathless, he would be speaking in accordance with the highest truth. For indeed, my lords, the Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Lord, visible here and now, timeless, inviting inspection, leading onward, to be comprehended by the wise, each one for himself or herself. And 2, the doors of the deathless are open. Stop here for a moment. So you see, this great Brahma, he also knows the Dhamma so well, because he was a monk before. So there's some people, they want to be reborn in the Pure Land. If you go to the Pure Land, the Dhamma you learn is still this type of Dhamma that the Brahma is so familiar with, because there's only this type of Dhamma that will lead you to liberation. No other Dhamma. All other Dhammas are low quality. The highest teaching of the Brahma, the Buddha said, in these 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas, the 4 Satipatthana, the 4 Vayama, the 4 Iddhipada, the 5 Indriya, the 5 Bala, the 7 Bojjhanga, and the Arya Atangika Magga. These add up to 4, 5, 5, 7, and 8, add to 37. This is Bodhipakya Dhammas. So you see, the Brahma is so familiar with the suttas. He can describe all these higher Dhamma so flawlessly. And he continued, those who have unshakable faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, and are endowed with the virtues pleasing to the noble ones, those beings who have arisen here on account of their Dhamma training, amounting to more than 2,400 Magadhan followers who have passed over, have by the destruction of 3 fetters become stream winners, incapable of falling into states of woe, and certain of enlightenment. And indeed, there are once returners here too. But of that other race indeed, that means the Anagamins, of greater merit still, my mind can make no reckoning at all, for fear that I should speak untruth. Stop here for a moment. So here, this Mahabrahma, he says that the Magadhan followers, 2,400 Magadhan followers have become stream winners, Sotapanna, and they are also Sakadagamins are once returners here. But Anagamins, he says he cannot talk about them. Why? Because Anagamins are reborn in the 4th jhana plane, and also in the Arupa realm, Arupa jhana realm. But since our Brahma is only in the 1st jhana heaven, he can't see the 4th jhana devas, so he says he cannot talk about them. This was the burden of Brahma Sanat Kumara's speech, and in connection with this, the great king Vesavana reflected in his mind, It is marvelous, it is wonderful that such a glorious teacher should arise, that there should be such a glorious proclamation of Dhamma, and that such glorious paths to the sublime should be made known. Then Brahma, Sanat Kumara, reading King Vesavana's mind, said to him, What do you think, King Vesavana? There has been such a glorious teacher in the past, and such a proclamation, and such paths made known, and there will be again in the future. Such was the burden of what Brahma, Sanat Kumara proclaimed to the 33 gods. And the great king Vesavana, having heard and received it in person, related it to his followers. And the Yakha Janavasabha, having heard it himself, related it to the Lord. And the Lord, having heard it himself and also come to know it by his own super knowledge, related it to the venerable Ananda, who in turn related it to the monks and nuns, male and female lay followers. And so the holy life waxed mighty and prospered and spread widely as it was proclaimed among mankind. We stop here. So this is an interesting sutta, what the Devas talk among themselves. They also discuss Dhamma. That's why it's not surprising when there's a Dhamma teaching that Devas and Devis come to listen. Anything to discuss? Maybe I can... Anything? Yeah. Yeah.
When the Buddha is about to pass away, he announced the life principle, and just before he passed away, he goes into the fourth jhana. He can do that because of the jhana. But what should us people do on our deathbed?
When a person is about to pass away, I think it is automatic that this life that passed before you, you will think of all the things that you did, all the major things, the good you did, and also the wrong things that you did. And the wrong things will weigh down on us heavily. So that's why it's very important to understand the Dhamma and to practice the Dhamma and not practice and do not do unwholesome things. Sometimes it might not be really evil things, but even neglecting to do your duty, sometimes it can be a great burden. You feel very guilty. Like, for example, some people, they don't take enough good care of their parents. And then after the parents pass away, then they regret all the what they didn't do, they should have done to repay the parents' kindness and all these things. So before the deathbed comes, you have to prepare for it. And on your deathbed, there's nothing much you can do because the karma vipaka is already run. You already created the karma. You have to pay for it. There is no way. It's not like other religions. You say you make a confession and then all your sins are gone. In the Buddhist religion, there's no such thing. You can feel remorse. You can say you're sorry for it, but you still have to pay for whatever you did. All the good and the bad, you will still be accountable. Or the other thing you must remember, whatever we think at the last moment, it does not matter so much. Why? Because even you can think of all the good things. After some time, the doctor will say, oh, this person is dead. So when the doctor certifies that the person has died, that is only clinical death. Clinical death and the death according to the Buddha is different. When the Buddha says when a person really dies, three things stop. One is the life principle. In Chinese you say the qi, the life principle. Secondly, the mind stops working. Thirdly, the body heat stops. Out of these three, we can only feel the body heat. So sometimes it happens like a few years ago, one of our Penang devotees told me the mother died of cancer. At the last moment when she was dying, she was in great pain because of the cancer, and then when she died, the face was in like suffering. But 1 hour later, the daughter told me the mother's face changed.
change to be very bright and very happy, smiling like that. So, you see, when a person is pronounced clinically dead, as long as the body is still warm, he has not died. And generally, it takes another 1 or 2 hours before the person really dies. So, in this 1 or 2 hours, the mind is still working. And whatever that person thinks, he has no control. It's just like dreaming. So, what the last thoughts the person has depends on your karma. If your nature is like what they say, animal nature, ngao cheng, gu khe, then the thoughts you have will be violent thoughts. You'll be fighting with people and all that, trying to defend your life and all these things. And that will bring you to the animal realm. But if you have been practicing the Dhamma, then probably the last, the 1 hour after your clinical death, the mind is working, you're thinking of Dhamma, you're thinking of all the good things. Then you'll be reborn probably like this sutta says, in the heaven of the 33, where you outshine the other devas. So if you have attained jhana, then probably when you're dying, the mind will go into that jhana state, and then you'll be reborn. Say you have attained the first jhana, then you'll be reborn as one of the Brahmas in the Brahma heaven. If you attain the second jhana, then the mind will incline to that second jhana, and you're reborn in the second jhana heaven, where you'll be enjoying life for a long time. But the most important thing is to understand the Dhamma. If we understand the Dhamma, learn the suttas, listen to the Nikāya talks more, and we have a basic understanding, then we have attained right view. And as this sutta says, when here even Brahma, Sanat Kumara knows, there it says in the paragraph 27, he says, from right view arises right thought. From right thought arises right speech, etc. So the most important is right view. If you haven't attained right view, you have not entered the Noble Eightfold Path. In the suttas, to attain right view, there are only 2 conditions. One is somebody else teaching you the Dhamma. That means either the Buddha teaching you the Dhamma through the suttas, or you listen to some Dhamma teacher who teaches the Dhamma according to the original teachings of the Buddha. Then the second condition is careful attention. You pay careful attention, then you understand, then you get right view. Once you get right view, you have entered the stream. And you have entered the stream, before you die, you attain the fruit, you will be Sotapanna. So then you can be reborn in the company of Sakadeva Raja and outshining Sakadeva Raja also. You have enough blessings. So, what is important is not what you should do on your deathbed. Whatever you do on your deathbed is not important. It's what you do now, between now and your death. Whatever number of years you have. You don't know how many years you have. Just a few weeks ago, we had one Buddhist come here. He's dying of cancer. So then he comes to the monastery to practice. So some people are like that. When you are healthy, you don't think of coming to the monastery. And when suddenly you know you have cancer, you have not much time left, and you come. Sometimes it might be too late. You might not have enough practice, time to practice and attain right view. Okay?
Bhante, our question, where do we come from and what's our origin?
This afternoon, our Victor asked me the same question. Where does everything come from? You go backwards. How do you know that everything exists? You know everything exists because of your 6 senses. You see the world, so you say the world exists, right? You hear the sounds of the world. You smell the smells of the world. You taste the taste of the world. And you touch the things of the world. And your thinking. The first 5 senses create the outer world. The 6th sense creates the mind, the inner world. Okay? So these six senses actually is basically consciousness. When you have consciousness working, you think everything exists. When you have no consciousness, nothing exists. right? So everything is in your consciousness. So you got to go backwards. You want to be delivered, you want to see the Creator, you go backwards, which means into your mind, into your consciousness. Go to the source of your consciousness. Then you'll know where everything arises. Right? Somebody sent me a letter. It's Chua Sun Ait from Kulim. He said, Dear Bhante, I hope Bhante is in good health. I have some questions that I hope Bhante can help answer during any of Bhante's Dhamma talks. Last Saturday, there was a freakish accident at a traffic light junction in Kulim. A lorry that was transporting sand apparently lost control, jumped a divider and overturned, dumping its load onto a car that had stopped at the red light. The sheer weight of sand crushed the car, killing one of its occupants, a pregnant lady, and seriously injuring the others. Other religions may refer to this accident as fate, while Buddhism may call it karma. But both fate and karma seem the same thing to me. If I take God out of the equation, without the concept of God, wouldn't karma and fate be just laws of nature, occurrences that happen as they were meant to happen? If my assumptions are wrong, can Bhante please explain why? Okay, this karma and fate, fate is actually not karma, fate is the vipaka. Karma is the intentional action that we do lah. And this law we call the law of karma vipaka. Karma is the action and vipaka is the result lah. So fate, you can say, is the result lah. But the thing is, in the Buddhist religion, fate is what was determined by our karma, not only in the previous life, but also the present life lah. So because we can create karma in this present life, we can actually change our fate lah. So if we go to a fortune teller, an expert fortune teller lah, if he reads your palm, he can tell you, there are some lah, he can tell you very clearly, for example, a lot of things about your life lah. Whether you'll be a very successful man, how long is your life roughly, and etc. lah. But if we practice the holy path, the spiritual path, we change our character. We create a lot of new karma to overturn the past karma, the karma of the past life. So if we create a lot of strong karma now, for example, a good example is, for example, this bandit called Angulimala. He killed apparently hundreds of people. So having killed hundreds of people, his fate or his vipaka is to be reborn in hell and suffer for thousands and thousands of years, maybe even millions of years. But the Buddha went to him, taught him the Dhamma so that he became a monk. Then he understood that there are realms of rebirth like hell where he will go if he didn't do anything about his situation, because he has already created a very heavy evil karma. So having understood that, he strove very hard. He strove very hard and became an arahant. So he changed his fate. He changed his fate. He didn't have to be reborn in hell anymore. So in Buddhism, fate is not sure. It's not something that is determined. We can change our fate. Here it says occurrences that happen as they were meant to happen. They are meant to happen because of past conditions. We created the past conditions. For example, if a person in the past life, his karma didn't have so much good karma, he's reborn into a poor family. But if he works very hard, and he's honest, and he proves himself, then he might succeed in life and become very rich. A good example is our Lo Bun Siu. Lo Bun Siu in Penang was born not from a rich family. So he was a mechanic, just a foreman who repaired cars and motorcycles and all that. And because he was extremely hardworking and very honest, the Japanese gave him the dealership of these Nissan cars, is it? Honda cars. So he became very rich, multi-millionaire. So in Buddhism, this karma vipaka can be changed. The Buddha said in one sutta that to overcome the obstructions from past life, in other words, our destiny is not so good. We have to create a lot of good karma now. The Buddha gave a simile of salt and water. The Buddha said, in the Buddha's time, salt was lumps and lumps of salt, not fine salt. You take a lump of salt, you put in a cup of water and you stir. You drink, it's very salty. You take the same size lump of salt, you put in the river, you stir and you drink, it's not salty. Why? Because there's a lot of water. So the water represents the good karma. The salt represents the bad karma. So we have to create a lot of good karma. Then it overweighs the bad karma from the past life. That's how we overcome obstructions. The other thing, in the suttas, the Buddha said, when we suffer, not always, it is not always due to karma. Like in this case, the lorry overturned and this pregnant woman was in the car and the whole load of sand crushed the car and the woman died. That can be due to accident. So if it's accident, then if that person's karma as a human being is not finished, then because of accident that person dies, then that person is likely to be reborn as a human being again, because his karma as a human being is not finished. Another thing the Buddha said, sometimes we suffer might be due to the weather. The weather is not good, then maybe there's too hot or too cold and then we get sick. Or there's no rain, and then there's famine. So also the Buddha said can be due to your own body, unbalance, too much phlegm or too much wind or all these things, too much heat and all this. And the Buddha has talked about a few conditions to give us suffering, and not all is karma vipaka. The second question, a lot of authors describe Nibbana as a blissful or peaceful state. To me, bliss and peace are feelings subject to arising and cessation. From my understanding, Nibbana is not subject to arising and cessation. Can we really describe Nibbana in terms of feelings or any other sensation? How did the Buddha describe Nibbana in the suttas? In the suttas, the Buddha says, Nibbanang paramang sukhang. Nibbana is the greatest bliss. But in the state of Nibbana, it is like cessation of perception and feeling, Nirodha Samapatti also, where there is no consciousnness, there is no perception, there is no feeling. And yet, the Buddha says, Nibbanang paramang sukhang. Because the Buddha says, he does not describe bliss only in terms of feelings. He says wherever bliss is found, there is bliss. In the state of jhana, the Buddha describes of all feelings, jhana is the greatest, is the most pleasant feeling. Why? Because in the state of jhana, the Buddha says there is no dukkha, absence of dukkha. Absence of dukkha means bliss. For example, when we sleep at night, there are two types of sleep. One is the dream state, and that is not so pleasant when you are dreaming. You might be frightened in your dream. It's like a nightmare. But there's another type of sleep which is a very deep sleep where you don't know anything at all. You don't even know that you exist. When there is no self, then it's very blissful. So that when you wake up in the morning, you don't feel like waking up. You want to sleep some more. So when you have a self, then you have to worry about the self. You have to protect the self. Always trying to protect the self. From the moment we are born until we die, we do everything every day just to protect the self. I and mine. Protect myself, protect my family, protect my loved ones and all these things. So we are struggling all because of the self. If there was no self, then we will be like the tree, free and easy, nothing to worry. So here the Buddha says Nibbana is not only in terms of feelings. Whenever there is bliss, then the Buddha says he recognizes it.
But we have not to know that if in some teaching of Buddha, then go to Nikāya, can he come down to earth and teach the Dhamma?
Once the Buddha enters Nibbana, he has left the world, so he does not come back. It's just like in your dream at night. In your dream at night, you see many people, you talk to many people and all that. When you wake up in the morning, can you go back to the dream and talk to the people? Cannot. So life is like a dream. Now we have not woken up from the dream. To us it's real. When you wake up, then you realize it's a dream. So you must wake up, then only you know. The Buddha is called the awakened one. We are all still dreaming. Okay?
All our Buddhas of the how to be to enlightenment has the
Past Buddhas attain to enlightenment what? They are not anywhere. You must listen to the Dhamma more. You must finish studying, listening to the Anguttara Nikāya. After that you go to the Samyutta Nikāya and Majjhima Nikāya. Then you will understand everything. This world, as I just mentioned just now, this whole world is like a dream in consciousness. We only know the world exists because our consciousness is working. Yeah? No. You have to understand the Dhamma. The Buddha says, we only think that we exist. Yeah, I asked you in your dream last night, you dreamt last night. Now you have woken up. What happened to that person in your dream? Disappeared. He never existed, you only thought he existed. Yes or not? Yeah.
Can I just ask, a lot of those animals, rats, mosquitoes, they are vector of diseases. So, a lot of times people try to kill them because they bring diseases to human beings. So, in killing them, is that wrong? Or if you are at home and then you see a lot of cockroaches, even that they will bring problems to your houses, they will bring diseases, is it wrong to eradicate them?
If you have an intention to kill, it is considered wrong. But sometimes it is unavoidable in the sense that you want to protect life. Yeah. So, for example, we don't like to kill ants. But when your house is the wood is all eaten up by termites, what do? So you have to decide whether your sila is more important or your house is more important. So we sometimes have to use our wisdom to see how to avoid killing. For example, cockroaches in the house, they come because there is food. Okay? And also they like to hide in dark places, dark and damp places. Okay? So, if you put the dustbin inside your house, and there's food inside the dustbin, they will try to go inside the dustbin and eat. So, ants also. If you bring dustbin inside your house, the cockroaches and the ants will multiply. So you have to put the dustbin as far away as possible. Say like at the gate of your house or outside the gate. That's one way. Okay. So other things, for example, like mosquito. You try to put mosquito netting on your house so that they don't come in. Or in the evening, you burn some mosquito coil before sunset, then they will not come. There is a time for mosquitoes to come, 2 hours before sunset and 2 hours before dawn. Say like 5 to 7 in the evening and 5 to 7 in the morning. That's the time when they are the most. So if at 5 o'clock you start burning the mosquito coil, from far they sense they won't come. They are attracted, from what I read, by mosquitoes are attracted by our breath. When we breathe out, there is carbon dioxide. So they come. So if we burn the mosquito coil, the wind will carry it, just like the wind carries our breath. So downwind, they get this mosquito coil smell, they won't come. So we have to think of ways how to avoid. For example, here we have a lot of rats. So we put traps. Now once in a while we put traps, and then we catch them and take it far away to throw away. The rats here are very fierce. They'll bite through the mosquito netting.
In the ghost trick, when we want to give them good marriage, we can offer them or burn something for them. But if the being is being reborn in hell, how does he gain good marriage to be reborn to have a good marriage?
He cannot gain anything. The Buddha said when somebody passes away, we can only help if they are reborn in the ghost realm. All other realms cannot help. If they are born in heaven, they don't need also. Born as human also cannot help. Born as animal also cannot help. Born in hell also cannot help. Only ghost realm. And the Buddha did not explain why, but I believe because only ghosts can come back. That's why many people, if their mother or father passes away, sometimes when the dead person comes back, sometimes you can hear somebody walking in the house you don't see. Or the door will open and close, the light will open and close. Why does he do this? Because he wants you to know that he's born as a ghost. And when they are born as a ghost, they need help. I have people telling me of experiences, like a friend of mine, the mother passed away. After he buried the mother entered the sister's body and came to talk to my friend. The mother said, I have something very important to say. That's why I borrow the daughter's body. She said that she knows the daughter will become very tired, but she can't help it. She says she must speak now. Later she has no opportunity to speak. So she says she's suffering and she's hungry, and she comes back to her own home. She cannot enter the house. But my friend, being a Mahayanist Buddhist, he didn't know what to advise. So he told the mother, "Mo pin." I told the mother, "You go where it's bright, where it's dark, don't go." But in the ghost world, where got bright? In the ghost world, all is dark. So the mother realized that the son cannot help her at all. The mother left. So only ghosts can be helped, and then only limited help. By giving them, what do ghosts need? You cannot bring them out of the ghost realm. The most you can do is give them the essentials like food and clothing. Either you offer food by the roadside, or like some people, Buddhists like to do, we go to the monastery or go to old folks' home, you offer food and inform them. Best is beforehand, before you do the dana, you inform a few nights in a row. You inform them they are going to do dana on a certain day, and you offer food, and if you want some cloth because basically these two things are important to a ghost. The most important is food. The Buddha says all beings survive on food. Even devas need food. Even hell beings need food. All beings need food.
Okay. Yesterday you mentioned that the arahants are not stones. Yesterday you mentioned that the arahants are not like stones. So basically they still have feelings, just the difference is that the mind is not affected by the feelings.
Yeah.
So first, what's the difference between feeling and mind? And secondly,
wait, one by one.
What's the difference between feelings and mind? Are they two different things?
Even the word mind, what do you mean by mind? Mind is just anything that is mental. Okay? So like sometimes the Buddha talks about perception, feeling, volition, consciousness. These are all different aspects of the mind. So feeling is just an aspect of the mind. Just like perception. Perception, you think, oh, this is beautiful, this is ugly, all this. This is your perception. This is yellow, this is red. Somebody who is colorblind will see a different color from you. So the perception is another thing. So feelings are these generally pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. So for an arahant, the same feelings arise, but because the arahant's mind is solid like a rock, the feelings arise and then subside very fast.
So this mind, does it refer to perception, volition, this kind of aspect?
Oh yeah, there are many aspects of it. Sankhara is volition. Sanya is perception. Consciousness, the word consciousness, vijnana, refers more specifically to the six sense bases. Seeing consciousness, hearing, smelling, taste, touch, and thinking consciousness. So these are all different aspects of the mind.
That's the second question. In some of the books, they actually translated Vedana as translation instead of feeling. So it seems like the first feeling, right, is more related to those mental sensations or physical sensations, rather than what we normally associate feeling with emotions, right, like I'm feeling happy. Right? So in terms of this, what Nikāya more mentioned is first sensations rather than emotions aspect. Right?
This feelings, the Buddha says, the suttas, then when there is a external sense object, for example, a form impinging on the eye, or a sound impinging on the ear, or a smell impinging on the nose, or a taste impinging on the taste buds, or a tangible thing impinging on the body, touch, and thoughts. When there is contact at the sense door, a feeling automatically arises, pleasant or unpleasant. Then it is followed by perception, volition, all these things. So because the mind works so fast, the feeling arises and passes away, and then other things follow, and then later again the feeling arises and passes away. So generally when we say emotion, is a combination of a lot of feelings. Then you say,
this is like in regards to just now the feeling part. If you say practice wisdom in regards to today, but then what I know is one life is, no matter it's hands or anything, is very precious. So when you kill one hand, means you have killed, and then that is a very bad karma. Everybody has done that, and then it's how it's very scary to actually know everybody has killed before, and how do you create enough karma to actually cover the evil karma that you have done?
in the Buddha's teachings and the Vinaya books, there are many levels of wrongdoing. Many levels. So like killing a human being is considered a major offense. For a monk to kill a living being, a human being, he's broken one of the heaviest offenses, heaviest precepts. Then he's not considered a monk anymore, even though he wears a robe. But if a monk kills a bird, kills an animal, it's a different category altogether. It's a minor precept. So there's a difference. And even among animals, if you kill an ant, because the suffering you engender cause is not so much. If you kill the buffalo, then it feels more pain. Probably like you kill a mosquito also, it's not so much suffering as to kill a dog, for example. So there is a difference. There's a difference. So what we have done in the past, we don't worry. What you know of the evil you have done is only this life. But that is negligible compared to the karma you have created in the past. So many lifetimes of karma, we are still not paid up. But even this killing human being, killing the mother and father is a different class again. There are 5 heaviest offenses. If you do, it will immediately bring you to hell, and there's no way you can prevent. Even the Dhammavuddho also cannot prevent you from going to hell for a long time. One is killing intentionally hurting a Dhammavuddho and causing him Buddha, causing him to shed blood. Second is to kill an arahant. Third is to kill your mother. Fourth is to kill your father. Fifth is to, when there's a group of monks in harmony, you are batu api, you make them divide, split into 2 sangha. So these are the 5 heaviest offenses. So you see, even human beings also, killing your mother and your father is different again from killing another person. So like in the case of the bandit Angulimala, he killed hundreds of people, but because he was not his mother and his father, he could still become, because of super effort in his striving, he became an arahant and didn't have to go to hell. So there are different categories. You cannot just think, I kill so many ants, I will go to hell. Don't worry, you won't go to hell. So as I mentioned just now, what evil karma we have done, forget about it. Now do as much good as you can to overcome not only this present life evil karma, also past life evil karma. And the best way is to become an Arya. Study the Dhamma and understand the Buddha's words, and you have entered the stream. You got right view. Once you have right view, all the 3 woeful planes are close to you. Forever, you'll never be born as a ghost or an animal or go to hell. Then you're no more scared of samsara already. You can take a slow boat out of samsara.
I think in Australia where I come from, there is now a tendency towards violent robberies. Robbers would target houses which are actually occupied by people who were trading, and they would just go straight for the occupants and give them a good beating. So out of fear, the occupants would automatically just hand over the valuables and whatever the robbers want. So I've been wondering about this for some time. If I would be a victim of a violent robbery, they come in with the intention to hurt me, so in defending myself, I will hurt them in return. From a Buddhist point of view, is that right thing to do?
It's the natural thing to do. Self-defense. At that time when you're excited, you don't think, what should I do? What is the Buddhist? You just do what is automatic. Right? So in defending yourself, if you happen to kill him also, you have not done wrong. As long as your intention is not to kill him. For example, if he's got a gun in his hand or something, if you can find a chopper, cut off his hand, so he cannot shoot you. But don't kill him.
Well, let's say in a situation whereby critically parents presented to ICU, and then the doctor once had told you that the parents is very sick, and then most of they think that the effort to kill the parents is actually quite in power, but the parents are still alive. So they are asking your opinion whether you should, whether they actually want to end the parents' life because they think every effort to help the parents has failed, and they think they should stop, and they are informing you. So what should your response be? Because from the medical point of view, doctors will tell you the effort is going to be enough. So if you make a decision that I need to tell them that I agree that you should not carry on, does that mean that you have been accomplished in taking away your parents' life?
There's a difference between euthanasia and removing the life support. There's a difference. Euthanasia is like killing somebody, like injecting. And then the law doesn't allow, isn't it? But there are certain countries where they approve self-euthanasia, where the person, say, is dying of cancer and he cannot stand the pain anymore because it's dragged on for 10 years or 15 years and he can't stand it anymore, and then he presses a button, then he has to press twice. Then the drug will go into his body. That in Buddhism is not advisable. It's not to say not allowed. Not advisable because if we are suffering, it might be due to our karma. And it's good to pay off whatever karma we have to pay, so that in the next life you don't pay for it. Okay? The other thing, is in the Buddhist, from the Buddhist point of view, we have a right to choose what we want. Every person has a right to choose. So, if a person, when I was in Australia in 1996 for 6 months, during that time there was a big case in Australia, in Darwin, I think Darwin somewhere. There was a man who was suffering of cancer for many years. He had been operated on and injected and all these things, and he did not get well, even though the doctor said he will recover, but he didn't recover. So he could not. He didn't have bowel control also. In the middle of the night, he'll have bowel movement and all these things, and his suffering was intensified. Seeing the wife having to look after him and suffer along with him. So he said enough is enough, and he wanted to commit suicide. At that time, the Northern Territory of Australia, they were the only state that had allowed euthanasia. So he did it with the help of a doctor, with the help of a computer specialist. They rigged up this equipment for him. He has to press. And then if he's nervous, if he changes his mind, the drug won't go into his vein, but if he's very sure, he has to press a second time. Then, so he died from that. So he has a right to choose, but the only thing is whether it's the right decision or not. But everyone, we have a threshold of pain. Beyond a certain threshold of pain, you cannot stand. Then whatever you want to, either During the war, then they use torture to torture somebody for information. They torture you a little bit, you are stubborn, you don't want to give information. But when they torture you too much, you cannot stand. You have to spill out all the beans because the pain is too intense, you cannot stand it. So in that sense, that person has to choose. If he cannot stand it anymore, it's his decision. The only thing, bearing in mind what I said just now, we have to think whether we should want to suffer or not. Secondly, this life support equipment. In our Buddhist teaching, our life depends on our will to live. As long as we hold on to will to live, we will not die. You see in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Mara came to ask Buddha to enter Nibbana so many times, the Buddha refused. Until the Sasana, the Buddhist religion was well established, then the Buddha agreed. And when the Buddha agreed, he let go of the will to live. When he let go of the will to live, then he had 3 months more to live. So this will to live can be very strong. If we hold on to the will to live, we won't die. So when a person, in what you mentioned just now, that the parent, the doctor says is hopeless already, may spend a lot of money already. And then, so if you take away the life support equipment, you are not killing him. You are making him decide whether he wants to live or he doesn't want to live. If he wants to live, he will struggle on. Even without the life support, he will struggle on. But if the pain or something is too intense, after some time, a person will give up, let go. Old people dying is just like that. And old people, when they die, they refuse to die. They hold on to life, until the pain becomes unbearable because the aggregates, the body is breaking up. And when the pain, they suffer, day after day they suffer. They still hold on to life because of attachment. Until the suffering is too long and too intense, then they give up. The moment they let go of the will to live, they will go. Okay? So there's nothing wrong in taking off the life support. But the family has to decide. It's better not to one person to decide. If one person decides, later you might regret. But if you make a collective agreement, then everybody takes responsibility. And whatever happens later, you won't feel so bad. Okay, shall we stop here?